Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Ames, and in today's final review of mass reintegration, we will look into the semester development of the thesis, as well as steps for moving forward for next semester. Within the societal consumerism complex of the United States, we are very quick to move on from our built structures and develop new spaces for future generations. This habit, while great for our economy, is not sustainable in any means. Instead of building new construction, it is time to take a breath and reevaluate the way we run shop. The reintegration of existing structures across the country and even world can result in a much more material conscious way of expansion, with the hope of providing a sustainable future. The research conducted over this past semester has been able to guide me in a positive direction in my work and provide a greater understanding of how my thesis can function next semester. A close review of literary studies on building reuse has been able to guide me through the following analysis formats to truly reintegrate a building back into a better performance of its first use. So, the first major items we will be discussing will be the goals for the thesis, a look into the precedent at how projects of this scale have been done before, and a graphic look at the life of an industrial building. One of the major goals from this will be the reintroduction to community within the site. After nearly a year of separation from your neighbor, it may be hard for some people to get used to the old way of life before the pandemic. So how can we program for reflex distancing? We simply design the way we have been forever, essentially. If we are to progress forward, we cannot design to a pandemic mode of life, though it would be wise to design for the adaptability for another pandemic time. The second premise focuses on the incorporation of mixed income programming and how the site does not prohibit the lower classes. Localizing the production of inexpensive goods can significantly reduce the price of the end product, as you cut out shipping costs and eliminate the need for other people to produce the end product. Mixed income housing can be incorporated by cross-subsidization with local state grants or local grants, as well as the property developer and owner. The goal is to minimize the gentrification to the site-specific area through the incorporation of multi-economic class incentives. Now, thousands of buildings across the United States at this moment are collecting dust and growing weeds where new families, companies, and even schools can be moving into. As cities gain population, space becomes more scarce to develop new construction. The cities must build up instead of out if the society's goal is for a greener future. Reusing past structures can have a huge impact on land conservation as well as carbon output across the globe. A new building that is 30% more efficient than an existing will have to wait between 10 and 80 years before the amount of carbon put into it equals out. Restoration of the old site will be determined on a case-by-case basis, as century-old buildings structures have more unique designs, as well as different envelope failures as their time progresses. When is there a better time than now to design efficiently? This is the time to think different and move forward with sustainable implementations across the field of architecture, with new technologies. We can utilize the technologies we have today, but technology of tomorrow needs to have equal importance in the design phase. The use of electrochromic smart glass could significantly reduce the energy use of a building by 20% by blocking out radiation from the sun, putting less force on the internal systems. In colder climates, geothermal heating can provide free warm air that is consistently between 55 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, just a few feet below the Earth's surface. We will also have to take a look into the preservation effort. Determining the heavy construction area of a project is unique and may be more complicated via the given site. Studies and evaluations of the structure of the building are one of the most important areas in the redesign process. While seeing a portion of the building failing structurally may be discouraging at first, this is actually an open door for an addition or redevelopment to the space. This can lead to the next major wow space and threshold between the new and the old. Overall structural analysis will require resourcing of an engineering team to evaluate the structure and envelope of the building. This team will be focusing on stress cracks in the concrete structure, failures in masonry sealant joints, points of water or air leakage, and more. After the evaluation is completed, the team should be able to come up with an estimate on the effort needed to reseal the building envelope, enhance structure, and price of the renovation. While the preservationist route is liked by some, I would argue that a contrast design develops a new building into a longer-lasting piece. One author, Christian Skiddick, said that in the case of conversion, design strategies break free from the either-or polarity of old and new, simply because they are always both. Properties with contrasting designs can stand the test of time with the expression of acknowledging the old while celebrating the new era of thought and design. Now, when we look at the life of an industrial building in 4 stages, Stage 1 covers the first life the building kicks off. A rectangular prism is the basis for the early industrial planning. Smokestacks, entry systems, and fenestrations would add a lot of character to the building. And if the budget was there, maybe even some arches above the windows. In its heyday, these complexes were well-oiled machines with dozens, if not 100 workers constantly producing material. But after some time, the company has a fallout somehow, some way, and eventually has to shut down, laying off all of these employees. As the building sits unattended and on the market, there is no attention to the regular building maintenance. The abandoned structures sit this way for years, decades, and even a century in some instances. Natural forces will batter the building with rain and snow, if in a cold climate. And if nature holds back, human nature will tend to kick in with vandalism. Stage 2 can end up lasting a long time. And the client and designer's role is to figure out how to get not just the same numbers of people the site would have seen, but greater numbers of shoppers, renters, and common citizens. So, Stage 3 begins with the evaluation of the building's key features and their relevance in the redesign. This could include window replacements, new curtain wall schemes, grand entries, and new extensions, such as these extension pods, and even a rooftop restaurant. Once the building caters its program to a variety of clients, this would in turn boost the site activity. In order for a site to be lasting for another 100 years of use, it needs to be ready to adapt for the user's need. Maybe this means the site can be readily built up with limited demolition. Maybe it means it could end up bridging out over other areas of the site, with new construction in another portion of the site. This new construction should be held to the same standard of adaptability and should be able to expand further as time progresses. As we take these concepts into the real world, 6 precedents have struck me with their own individual aspects that will influence a future design. Starting off, we have Caxia Forum, located in Madrid, Spain. This building used to be a power station built back in 1900. It was redesigned by Herzog and de Meuron in 2008 and was chosen for the clashing materialities and dynamic entry schemes. Next on the list is Domino Park, located in Brooklyn, New York. In 1865, the building was designed as a sugar refinery and is now turning into mixed-use programming designed by James Cornerfield Opp. This project is still underway, but I chose it for its exterior use and stack scheme. Next, we have Mass Mocha, located in North Andover, Massachusetts. This site used to be textile mills back in the late 19th century, until the reconstruction in 1995 by Brunner Kott and Associates. This site design takes a more preservationist and minimal look at the buildings, with limited changes to the exterior. Up next, we have Remise Schlesische Straße, located in Berlin, Germany. In the late 1800s, this site used to house a large beer distribution center and was transformed in 2003 by Augustin and Frank Architekten. It promotes a new modern addition clashing with the original right below, while it also has a minimal sight from the street. Then we have the Inojima Art Project in Naoshima, Japan. This site was only active for 10 years in the early 19th century and lay abandoned for almost a century. Designed by Kazuo Sejima in 2008, the designers exposed most of the existing structure on the site while sinking the new functional building underground, respecting the former footprint. And lastly, we have Zesche Zollverein, designed by OMA in Essen, Germany. The former coal mine and plant was built in 1847, abandoned in 1986, and transformed in 2007. It is now a large gathering area with restaurants, art exhibits, museums, and more. As my thesis is not limited to a specific location, I looked into different sites in different regions across the United States. And from this development of researching, I concluded that the site would be located in the state of New York within the city of Buffalo. Located in the east side of the city, the abandoned Wonder Bread factory has been sitting alone since 2004. Built in 1923, this factory had produced bread product at mass scale, as well as Hostess products once the Wonder Bread company took over from the former Ward Baking Company. With a plot size of 2.88 acres, the site contains the 180,000 square foot building at 5.5 stories high at its highest peak, with an enormous parking area just outside. Circulation around the site provides plenty of access for walking as well as driving to and from. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of biking around the area, but that should be implemented in a further design. There's an active railroad which creates the site's western boundary. Genesee Street is a main road, which is the closest main road to the site, having public bus stops. It is also a straightaway to downtown Buffalo, making for a 10-minute commute. And then there are all the side streets shooting off into the dense neighborhoods of mainly single and multifamily residences. In terms of amenities in the surrounding walkable area, there's only one park with a playground for public access, unfortunately. There are 4 different schools, 5 different religious organizations, 6 different types of commercial properties, and 6 other industrial purpose lots. As we look further into the immediate site amenities, a middle school sits directly to the east side of the site. This is followed by another abandoned commercial lot, a U-Haul commercial site, an industrial sign shop, an industrial packaging manufacturer, and an undisclosed industrial facility. The local zoning for the area calls for a compact industrial district with a majority of dwelling districts radiating out from the site. There's also community business districts following the main Genesee Street and some commercial zoning close to the site. It's not difficult to change the zoning of the site, though tedious and time-consuming. The appeal will be brought to a public hearing and will be decided by a majority vote. Quoting the city legislation, no matter who proposes the change, amendments to the zoning map or text must be made for the benefit of the community as a whole, and not for the individual property owner or developer. Looking at the annual precipitation will also provide important data when designing for watershed, collection, and snow impacts. The city sees an average of 94 inches of snow every year and an average of 40 inches of rainfall. Sunpath is another integral piece to the redesign of the building. As it currently sits, the tallest face of the building maximizes the south-facing windows to flood the floors with daylight. As I develop the project further into next semester, I will be redesigning with the LEED rating system in mind. I've developed a chart to track possible points I can earn in the different areas of certification, with the goal of creating a LEED certified building at the minimum. It will be classified under the new construction, building design, and construction rating system. The reintegration of the building will happen by the 3-phase process as follows. Preserve the most important and historical areas of the building, such as this major facade. Transform areas of the building that could use extra work, like the loading bay and old store. And continue a plan for other future needs of the site, such as the redesign of the parking lot. These 3 areas will be the essential design strategy for my future work. In a further diagram, I've highlighted the specific areas targeted for each phase, and will add an after product diagram next semester explaining the conducted phase results. The program for the site needs to yield something to benefit this community, not just because of the legal requirements within the zoning, but to give back to the community morally. As I located amenities around the site, I noticed a trend in the lack of recreation space, proper fresh produce markets, as well as education centers. The current amount of food stores in the area are a majority convenient and small to-go restaurants, creating a food desert in the area. I noticed how there are no other education centers outside of the high school, trade school, and small religious academies in the greater area. As a true program was decided for the site, I took these areas lacking amenities into consideration. A fresh produce market will be a key programmatic element into the new building. To keep the cost low for the produce, there will also be a combination of indoor vertical farm and exterior growing spaces. The use of interior enclosed systems can yield up to 6 times the amount of an exterior grown substance, as well as use 75 to 90% less water than current exterior irrigation. A new public library will be included as the second key programmatic element. This will provide areas for people to read, study, and have local organizations or club gatherings. The third key element will incorporate an interior and exterior recreation space. This will provide access to citizens of all ages dedicated recreation space. It is especially important that the interior space is part of this, as the city of Buffalo suffers extremely cold winters, which limit the exterior recreation grounds. There will also be a focus on incorporating a dining restaurant, residential apartment spaces, as well as group workspaces small businesses and companies can rent from. These last elements will use the remaining space of the building once the key 3 are fully planned out. As I begin brainstorming for the next semester, a simple partie will represent the initial goal for the building's reintegration process. The strategy of buildings within the major envelope of the current building is the next move in the design process. As it is difficult to ensure the full sealing of an entire building, these buildings within can be individually sealed within a new double envelope. The demolition of interior spaces would be kept to a minimum, only opening up the alley and general areas for walking between the new buildings. So what comes next? This research will be thoroughly designed to formulate the newly reintegrated building back into the community. Because when there is an opportunity to rebuild as opposed to build, that is the sustainable design need for the future. Thank you.